All right. So, Ollie and I was speaking when we was planning the podcast on what to speak about, and we felt like obviously with it being this time of year that pre-season was probably the topic that we should delve into. So, I'm going to put the pressure on you straight away, Ollie, because obviously we was discussing questions and stuff before, but let's talk about pre-season from a nutrition perspective then. So, maybe let's start with the mistakes you see is probably the easiest place to start for the everyday athlete with their nutrition in pre-season.
Good. Yeah. So I guess number one, what the thing that first came to me is always about body composition, and I mean just generally body composition. Being an athlete and how to manage that is probably just a big mistake in general. But you obviously tend to see it a lot more in pre-season because you might have body composition testing, whether you're at a club or anything. You obviously have desires to get fitter, get leaner, get stronger, put on more muscle, etc. But yeah, there's always that kind of thought in the back of people's mind that being leaner and dropping that body fat percentage is gonna make them a better athlete, and to some degree it will. But I think there's almost too much emphasis placed onto it, and the sacrifice of the nutrition to get that is almost too much, and then we actually compromise our performance during that preseason block, which is ultimately about obviously tactically and technically trying to get back to where we want to be. We are compromising that because we're trying to achieve these composition goals, so we're just not doing it in the right way. And as I say, if people go about it kind of in their own way, what I typically see is athletes just constantly undercooking themselves and trying to get quite immediate results and just not doing it the right way. So I mean, I could go on for ages about this, but uh, yeah, we'll keep it there for now. And then I'm sure we'll probably dive into it uh,
Yeah.
later down the
Well, to
line.
be fair, I've got a question on that if we don't mind. Just
Go.
because like even not just for obviously athletes, but obviously myself, I'm probably going through something similar where I've had a bit of transition in sport and I'm doing a triathlon in October, so I am trying to lose a few kilograms. So I guess the question is probably me being a little bit selfish here as well in terms of how do you find that balance then of knowing that you're going to get probably some performance improvements from having a focus on body composition, but at the same time needing to fuel, obviously, to perform and then fueling to recover as well.
Yeah, it's cool. So the first thing I'd always ask everyone is actually, do you think you would benefit from dropping fat mass? And you're going to get obviously a huge spectrum of athletes here, and those who are already really quite athletic. Is there actually any benefit to dropping potentially 1 to 2 kilos of fat mass? For some people, there definitely will be a huge benefit to it. So I think you kind of need to be really, really critical with yourself and where you're at and the demands of your sport and where you're trying to be to whether there's an improvement there. But yeah, how you balance that between recovery, performance, fueling is we need to decide when we're going to create that deficit. And we don't just want to blanket it across the week, really. Like, I know it's really easy to stick to, and to be fair, for some people, it might work. But ultimately, most days look a little bit different for all athletes, and we need to prioritize certain days over others. So there's no point if we're having like a double training day, or we're in the gym in the morning and we've got a long pitch session in the evening. They're not really the days to be cutting 1,000 calories to try and drop that fat mass. What we want to be doing on that day is making sure that we're recovering well from the gym and we're fueling well for that evening session so that you can perform to your best, make the right decisions, push yourself harder, get the adaptations, and then ultimately you become a better athlete from that. The time to obviously make the nutritional changes and to bring down sort of the carbohydrate intake quite a lot. Something we can go into in a minute as well, but particularly bring down that calorie intake are the days where we don't require the energy as much. So we need to be really smart about it. But again, another kind of mistake that I quite often see is that it's those days that people relax around food a lot. They try to enjoy themselves, and it's tough on the balance because I like athletes to go enjoy themselves and to eat out, be sociable, go see friends and family. But they're the days when you don't need a really, really high calorie intake because they're not the days when we need the fuel for performance. So I guess one of the biggest things I always get athletes to do is to look at their week and try and categorize what are their tough days, what were the higher fuel days, and what are their lower, easier days, and then you might have some in the middle as well. So actually looking at a bit of a periodization model across the week, and then you jump into actually, what would that look like from a food point of view?
Yeah. This is nice into like some of the conversations that I have with my athletes at the moment in terms of week design and like taking control of your week. So essentially, work, family, social commitments, get them all in there, then get your training commitments in there, and then before you know it, you've got your week designed in full from training, but then also obviously all the other demands that obviously maybe not physically energy, but energy in different ways as well, that we then have to have in our week. And then you can work backwards in terms of then linking that obviously when your nutrition as well, which for me, and obviously from an S&C point of view, we try and make your hard days hard and your easy days really easy. So I guess it's linking the two together, isn't it? In terms of, you've got nutrition over here, you've got your S&C and your gym based stuff here. Well, actually, they need to intertwine and work together rather than being these two separate things. Um, and I think that's probably where most people get it wrong at times. Is that, like you just said there, they have the day off, and that's the day where you know they might go and have the treat and a few beers and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'd
that
say
interesting dynamic.
good bit of advice for that. What I always tell people is enjoy yourself at that kind of select meal. So let's say if your lower day is a Friday, we're not active as a complete rest day. Obviously, we still want good quality food going in. Let's just make sure breakfast and lunch are still like really, really high quality. We can still play around with the composition of those meals. So yeah, we'd probably drop down the carbohydrate intake those days. And then you enjoy yourself for dinner. But again, what we often see is that they might have a bit of a brunch at 11 a.m. And then they'll have more snacks introducing that day because they're just a bit more relaxed around their food, and then they've got their meal out in the evening or something like. So yeah, that meal out is absolutely fine, providing that it's literally that. If they're trying to reach their goals, I guess there's still got to be that application the rest of the time away from that, so it's not making or damaging their progress essentially.
100%, 100%. And then in terms of kind of like then how you approach preseason, because I think this will then probably link in nicely to the S&C mistakes and the things that we kind of see on that side of things. So preseason, obviously, I know this is kind of like a conversation, a question that could lead to a million different answers, but from a fundamentals perspective, because I think for the everyday athlete, that's something obviously we need to focus on. Where should that focus be from a nutrition perspective? At the very first day of preseason, look at what their goal is. How should they then work the nutrition backwards from that?
If we're just talking athletic performance rather than body composition.
Yeah, we'll go from there.
Well, I guess yeah. Looking at that schedule, and then just making sure these fueling windows, what I call them, are smashed. So we're highlighting when we need good amounts of fuel going into the body. Again, another mistake. We're not just picking up mistakes, but people will typically have like a really big dinner and will take the time to have a really good quality meal in the evenings, but might skimp at like rest of the day. So again, as an athlete, the most important time of the day for them is that training period. So what we got going in before the session, the meal before and a snack, I would always say like leading from breakfast all the way through to the session, depending on what time it is, and what we got planned for after the session. So yeah, as I say, it's really looking at that pre and post window period. How are we looking from a food point of view? Where am I going to be when I'm leading into that? So again, not everyone's going to have the opportunity to be at home for their like pre-training meal, or they might be on the move or something. So what preparation have I got to make sure that I'm well fueled, I'm ready to give it my all come that first session. That first session back is normally got a fitness test in there somewhere, so we're going to need quite a lot of carbohydrate, and it's going to be a pretty sweaty session. So yeah, thinking about your hydration, thinking about your fueling, rather than, I guess it's pretty easy just to turn up to training and not really think about changing anything from your day to day.
Yeah, yeah. I think linking this then into like S&C and stuff is that planning and preparation, and it's so cliche, like in terms of we like, but it is just matter of fact, fundamentals and foundations are there for a reason, and being able to take control of your planning and your programming from an S&C and nutrition standpoint means that then you're able to take control of all the controllables that are then within your week. Because for the people listening as everyday athletes, you're balancing work, family, social life, relationships, and then you've got this training that you've also got to do on the side of it to obviously compete and everything else in between. And if you leave that to chance, the chances are you're not going to get the desired output that you want. So I think if for those of you that are listening, if you could take anything from that so far, is preseason planning is probably the biggest fundamental you can get in there. And I think that comes from obviously having good goals at the start. So maybe let's talk about kind of like goal setting. I think that may be a good place to take it, especially with preseason, because uh, day one of preseason, hopefully by this point already, like athletes have already got a goal in mind that they can then work towards. So, how do you kind of go about your goal setting with your athletes before day one arises of preseason?
Yeah, so nutritionally, again, like everyone will jump on the body comp, sort of that would be the main focus. Like, where do I want my body to be? But there's so much more to nutrition than that. So I'd always try and get them to think a little bit more about, yeah, like their game, like this season, or what your strengths, what your weaknesses, what we're trying to actually work on. Whether that's we're trying to increase power, we're trying to increase speed, sprint speed, things like that, and work that back nutritionally, because a lot of it will come down to muscle development, muscle growth, quite a lot of that, getting those adaptations right, or maximizing the adaptation from their gym program. So it's up to the individual, but all I'd say is, yeah, don't just fall into the trap of thinking I just need to lose body fat and to optimize my body composition. There's so much more to it there. And I guess, yeah, preseason is a great time to sort of work on those habits as well, like for the season. So if you can pick up some really, really good nutritional habits, which you nail for a 6 week block when we're really motivated, then you can take that into the actual season. Because everyone's always got a bit of a buzz about them when they come in, or when they start their preseason, and that's a great time to be trying to make these changes and to improve things. The more you can repeat that during that period, then again, as I say, that's only going to kick on from there, essentially. So yeah, that's probably where I'd look at from a goal point of view nutritionally. If you are looking at dropping body fat, then we probably want a bit more of a slow and steady rate. So like typically a lot of the research says around 0.5 kilograms per week fat loss is kind of the maximum that we want to be aiming for, and that doesn't compromise too much performance. Or what we tend to see if people go too aggressive is a big loss in muscle mass. So yeah, we might be actually dropping that fat mass, but all we're trying to do from a body comp point of view is improve typically the power to weight ratio by dropping that fat mass. But if we're actually losing muscle mass at the same time, we're actually just keeping the same speed, strength, power output that we had in the first place. So we've got to keep hold of that muscle, and if we go too aggressive with that fat loss phase, then we're going to lose that muscle as well. How we do that is, yeah, the protein manipulation throughout the diet, managing when we've got that deficit, when we haven't got that deficit. There's loads we get into, but yeah, I guess from like a goals point of view, that'd probably be where I'd start.
Yeah. The two words that I picked up there from what you said was changing habits. So I think on the change side of things, that at times we can look at it really like, gym plan, nutrition plan, and that's the change that we try and attack. Where actually change is a lot for change to happen. There's all these different moving parts that we've kind of got to take control of, which then links me to what you said there about habits. And I think for anyone that's listening again, like if you can nail down your standards, habits, routines, and rituals around your nutrition and around your strength and conditioning, control the inputs to get the output from the goal that you've got in the first place, you will be in a better place come the end of preseason. And I think those two words there, like changing habits, is really, really important, which is where let's maybe take it now, because like you say, like habits are a good thing to maybe focus on when we're in this period of change over preseason. So for me, I don't like the term non-negotiables as that much, to be honest with you, because I spoke about this the other day. Is that as soon as you don't do it, the non-negotiable becomes like a sometimes negotiable, and then we're consumed with this guilt that because we've not ticked off our non-negotiable nutrition habit that we have to do in the morning, well, it's no longer a non-negotiable, which is why I like this kind of word around standards and habits instead. Um, in terms of like a nutrition things, then, like, what would you say are maybe some good habits to kind of have from maybe a food and hydration perspective? So I've just interrupted there because Ollie and I actually work together through the Athletes Training Club, where we help everyday athletes improve their performance. They could dominate and then thrive on and off the pitch. So if you're thinking, yep, that is a bit of me, head down to the notes below, click apply, and we'll get you on a level up call where we'll help you gain more control and more balance so you can start making immediate improvements to your performance as of today. Back to the podcast.
Yeah. So that pre-training snack is a big one, or that pre-training fuel up. So yeah, we're not just relying on our main meals to provide us with fuel. They will provide a lot of the fuel going into that session, but can we get something in 60, 90 minutes before that session that's going to be, yeah, easy to digest, high carb, that's going to just give you that edge going into the training session. So are we repeatedly doing that? We're not just doing that once a week or one training session a week. Are we doing that with most sessions so that we get the benefit from it? Big one for me is obviously with the heat around and middle of the summer, what we're doing hydration wise. Have we actually got a bit of a plan going into the session with our hydration strategy? So there's something called pre-hydration, where yeah, we're trying to make sure we're starting training in a well hydrated state, so that we're offsetting any fluid losses that are going to occur, or minimizing the fluid losses that's going to occur, because ultimately it's very hard to keep up with it, particularly when it's really, really hot and the sessions are really demanding. So again, leading into the session, are we thinking about consuming this kind of 400 to 600 milliliter over like an hour period or an hour and a half leading into the training session? Are we doing that every single session? Have we got a bottle on us to be able to achieve that? It's like really, really simple and basic, but people, where they slip up is that they just don't have a bottle on them, or they haven't even thought about it. So yeah, working backwards from that, can we buy a bottle? Can we get it off online? Get it in for pre-season? If we haven't got it there, it's very hard to achieve these really basic things and really simple things. And then as we go into the session, we're constantly sipping on those fluids. I think some athletes will be amazed at how much sweat they might lose in a 90 minute to 120 minute session. You could be seeing 2, 3, even 4 kilos or liters of fluid loss during that period, which is just huge. How you're supposed to perform when that's happened, I don't know. And then the knock-on impact is just later on in the week, you've got to try and recover from that and rehydrate from that. And if we don't do that correctly, because we haven't got a bottle on us or anything, then by the 4th session of the week, we're really going into it pretty dehydrated. So it's just this knock-on effect which impacts your whole program.
Something as simple as a routine of having a bottle on the side before you leave the house on an evening for training could be the difference between performance and good performance and poor performance. Like, I was speaking about this last night in a webinar, is that actually when you break things down, you can make things really, really simple. And like something as simple as that, I think from an S&C perspective, can you get into like good routines around kind of warm ups and preparation, and actually utilizing those warm ups obviously as an opportunity for getting better within pre-season, because you're not going to have potentially the time in season to make decent adaptations, whereas the warm-ups could be a really good opportunity in your preseason to actually utilize as an opportunity to get better. But then also as well, like using those warm-ups in preseason to actually then make the main thing in terms of driving performance in the session, whether that's a field session with a team or a gym session. I think at times, like, it's too easy to skip the routine of not doing the warm-up or just ticking the box. Whereas if you can have some discipline around a structured warm up that actually has an objective, again, it's going to make you better at specific things within that warm up, but then it's going to actually get the session to a point where it's actually going to drive better adaptations. So, again, routines that can be broken down that are a lot more simple.
It's not very sexy though, is it?
It's not, unfortunately, no, it's not. And then again, like, it's like there's a lot of information out there right now. Again, like, I think you can almost become extremely overwhelmed, even as coaches and practitioners, from information overload. And then when you actually talk things through, you're like, oh, actually, it can be fairly simple. It's like the goal setting thing, in terms of like, figure out what your desired outcome is, figure out what the inputs are to get that output, and then linking in what we've just spoken about there, then set the standards, routines, habits, and rituals to then drive those inputs to then get you at the outputs. And if you can almost like take a back step and take this overview of all of that, you're then able to take control. And I think control is the key word, especially in pre-season, where you can get 4 or 5 weeks in without taking control and think, oh shit, I'm in a bit of trouble now because I've not taken control. So, like you say, unfortunately, it's not sexy, but
that almost makes it better. That's how you know how effective and important it is.
yeah.
So
How often?
always got.
How often do you have conversations with athletes and they'll ask you something out of interest, and you'll just give them like a really basic answer, and they're like, "Oh, is that it? Does that happen a
Uh,
lot?" Or
yeah, yeah. To be fair, like I mean, I think everything can always be simplified, and
mm,
they're not necessarily seeking for a really complicated answer. But I mean, one thing that I was going to mention and bring up is like muscle soreness. So obviously huge in preseason. You see everyone sort of hobbling around trying to manage their muscle soreness. Sometimes it's just like that protein hit straight away after training, or have we got enough protein coming into the diet? And they expect there to be some, I don't know, magical supplement that can take away all muscle soreness. It actually comes down to all the best food for reducing muscle soreness just comes down to your protein intake and making sure that you're nailing something pretty quickly after the session and getting that protein on board. But yeah, they do often expect there to be an easier or something that they've never heard of before that's going to solve all their issues, but it doesn't come down to that. Have you got any tips for like muscle soreness, or like what would be your recommendations for managing that in pre-season?
I think the biggest thing is probably like reversing it back before that and actually just being better at managing load first and foremost. Is that I think the mistake that we see in pre-season is we've got 7 days in a week and there is something on every single day within those 7 days. So you've got gym on a Monday, team training on a Tuesday, they'll do the gym on a Wednesday, team training on a Thursday, gym on a Friday, and then they'll do something on a Saturday. They'll play sevens on a Saturday, and then and then it's easy to then wonder why they're then not able to move on the Sunday. So I think it's maybe trying to attack that before. So um, and I alluded to it earlier in terms of making your hard days hard and your easy days really easy. Is that we just try and like double up stuff. So, for example, I'm a big fan, even in preseason, of making Tuesday and Thursdays are really hard days where possible. And I understand this isn't easy for everyday athletes who then have to almost also work 9 to 5 and then train in an evening to then get into the gym in the morning is difficult. But can we do our gym session in the morning? Can we do our field based session in an evening on a Tuesday with the team, like you say, which you rock up, there's no balls, or you just see 3,000 cones and you know you're going to get ran to death. But then on a Wednesday, like you say, like, yeah, you're probably going to be a little bit sore, but then use that as an actual recovery and regeneration day where linking it back to obviously, your genius in terms of get your nutrition right. But then what can we do from an active recovery perspective and then a passive recovery perspective as well to then drive that Wednesday as a recovery and regen day. And I just think that linking it obviously back to the muscle soreness things, I like the idea of programming recovery, even if it's passive. Like program it within your like how you would program anything, because then it's going to drive adaptation anyway. And again, so cliche, but like you do all the hard work, and then the hardest work's done outside the gym. But it's just as an important of a factor, isn't it, in terms of getting that recovery gen right? So I think that would be the biggest thing for me is that take control of that load management, understand where your hard days are, understand where your easy days are, drive recovery and regeneration on those easy days, linking it back to your stuff, drive that fueling aspect to perform
Mm.
on your hard days.
What
Would
would
that
you
coincide with kind of your? Oh, sorry, go on.
no, I was just interesting, like going back to almost like the goals, and I don't know whether it gets a bit overcomplicated, but like, what would you say is the actual goal of a preseason? What do you actually want to achieve with an athlete? Where do you want them to be 8 weeks down the line? Because I feel like everyone, obviously, I don't know, it's quite generic. You just say, oh, I want to perform better and feel better. I don't know. Do we have like a clear concept of what that preseason phase is all about, and what we should be actually trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think, like you said there, it's the way that I see it with preseason is we can make anybody fitter, faster, stronger. That's not the problem. The issue is then how can we then drive longer term adaptations? So the way that I kind of break goals down for preseason now is I guess it's more vision based, if I'm being quite honest, and not vision in terms of closing your eyes and visualizing it, but what is the vision in terms of the play that you want to be and need to be, and then working backwards from there. So, in terms of setting goals in the first place, it's what are the demands of your sport? What are the demands of your position, first and foremost? Then I think there's even at like the everyday athlete level, there's got to be some element of what does my team need from me, and then making sure that you can then contribute to that bigger picture. So um, you might want to be the fastest player in your league, but is that what you really need to be contributing to your team? So I think they're the first three things. Um, from a goal setting perspective, then in pre-season, I think it's a really good time to take control of not just the performance aspect, but then also that energy aspect as well. In terms of linking it directly to what you said as well, can we build good habits? Can we build good standards, routines, and rituals that allows us to find better balance with our energy for when we do get in season and the chaos begins? Because let's face it, like whether you're an elite athlete at the very top of your game, or if you're an amateur athlete who's training twice a week and playing on a weekend and working full time, there's a lot of different energy buckets we've got to balance. So can
Mm.
we build those habits, routines, rituals? And I know I keep saying it, but it's something I'm quite passionate about now, to then make sure that we can take control of those buckets when the chaos starts. Um, so yeah, like you say, I think it needs to be very performance based, obviously at the start, but then also as well that, all right, how are we then going to drive performance in the long term as well? So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, or you want me to elaborate more, or
No, no, I think it does. I think it all comes down to that kind of basic foundations of what you're trying to achieve, trying to work out what your actual values are. I would put something that we haven't really mentioned, but like just injury prevention in there as well. So like how are we going to make sure that you're robust enough to last across the season? But it all comes down to those habits and that bottom of the pyramid stuff, isn't it? What we're doing day to day, and those rules and standards that we set ourselves. Really hard and kind of fluffy stuff to talk about, really, isn't it? And everyone does talk
it
about it, and
is, it
people are
is,
probably sick to death of hearing about it. But I guess that's
yeah.
how important it is.
Fluff is the word, but at the same time, and you said the word rules there, and this is something that like probably like clicked for me recently, is that we grow up with rules from school all the way through to adulthood to work to everything you do now has some form of rule attached to it. But then it's very rare we then apply rules to our own lives. And why do we have rules? Well, it's to make sure that nothing really goes wrong or nothing catastrophic happens. So by setting rules as an athlete, we then are able to take better control of something not going wrong. So obviously you alluded to the injury side of things. If we could set rules around nutrition, recovery, regeneration, or physical preparation, then we've got a better chance of reducing that risk of then being more robust and resilient and not getting injured. Um, and when I said that out loud for the first time the other day, I was like, yeah, that's it. Like I now understand why I was
Nailed it.
like consumed by rules as a kid in primary school, and we all, and also as well, like what I also say is that rules are there to be broken at times, and
Yeah,
it's
I saw
okay
that.
not to
That's
get
brilliant.
everything right. Like it's fine. The example that I use is that I'm pretty sure Kobe Bryant woke up one morning at 3 a.m. and thought, "I'm going to stay in bed today."
Not today. Yeah. I mean, that's
Exactly.
me most
So
mornings. That's me every morning, in fact. I think we're up at 3
yeah,
unless to go on holiday, but he's a different beast, isn't it?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but you're right, and yeah, I like that rules. I think it's just a little bit less. I think feel like non-negotiables is, I don't know, quite rigid and harsh on us. Not harsh on ourselves, but we'll feel a bit deflated, a bit guilty if we don't stick to them. And as you say, like once we've done it, missed it a couple of times, then we've really lost that non-negotiable. Whereas, yeah, rules do have a little bit more flexibility in them, as does every kind of performance program and preseason period. There's always that element of flexibility. Um, there was something that came up recently, and it comes up a lot in sort of weightlifting athletes, is that they're all or nothing mentality. And I don't know if you've experienced this maybe with yourself, sort of signing up to that triathlon, like
Yeah,
motivation's really high. Pre-season, same thing, like motivation's really high. So our slide or our on switch suddenly goes, yeah, we're on it. We're going to give this 110%. I'd almost prefer it if athletes just undercooked it a little bit and just went 90, 85% at it, but obviously could maintain that for a long period of time. So yeah, the analogy I always use is like just be more of a slider. So let's not be an on-off switch where motivation just suddenly goes and we're done and all our habits fall out. We're sliding around, and some days we're going to slide down a little bit. Motivation's going to be a little bit lower, but we're still applying quite a lot of these basic principles and rules that we've set ourselves. And then some days motivation is going to be a lot higher, and we can actually smash all our goals and desires out the park. But yeah, it's managing expectations a little bit there. As I say, when people are absolutely buzzing and want to go full throttle at it, let's actually be a bit more realistic.
that's it. Anybody can be great for a week, but can you be consistently good over a full preseason period? That's kind of what I try and just drum into the athletes all the time, is that I don't need you to be great for 1 week or 2 sessions a week and then not for the rest of the month. Just be consistently good. If you can be consistently good, stick to your rules. And if you do miss a day, we'll just make sure you don't miss 2 days in a row, and you will be a better athlete by the end of preseason.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes it
Absolutely.
sound very simple, but I guess when you break it down, you can make it pretty simple. So smashing.
Is
That
that
was
preseason
it.
done
Got
then? I don't know.
it. Well, we've just finished it with that. It's as simple as that, haven't we? But I think we
There you
start.
go.
I think we start to get pretty deep at the end. So we probably should end it there before it gets deeper on a Friday afternoon.
I'm not sure I
At
actually
the
get that
time.
much nutritional benefit, to be honest. It was,
Yeah.
but I guess again, that's just the importance of other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Smashing.
guess other quick top tips, quick fire top tips that I thought of before coming onto here because I knew we were talking about preseason is again like when it comes to hydration is looking at the use of electrolytes, particularly if it's hot, if it's a long session. Get those electrolytes on board, get them into your fluids before training and during training as well, and like being really smart with your supplement intake as well. So like creatine is a great time to get back onto that. We'll probably do, I'm sure, another session on this and explain why. But if you have cycled off it for the off season or anything, get back on it. The whey protein, use that to your benefit. I talked about like that muscle loss, particularly if we're in a sort of energy deficit. Get that on board, and just fuel because too